To the American Psycho. Well, guess what? It's going to happen. It's going to be slow moving, perhaps. It's going to be extremely entertaining. I've got a fantastic segment planned for a superstar coming in. And if you think that I'm telling you the truth, well, guess what? I have no business behind this mic at this point in time.
Complications at the age of 68. The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air ran from 1990 to 1996, which is obviously more running than James ever did. Jonah Hill was spotted nuzzling up to a mystery woman while grocery shopping in Los Angeles. Of course, in Hollywood, even a walk down the cereal aisle is more commitment than most celebrities can handle. Along with bad reviews and accusations of lip syncing, Britney Spears can add wardrobe malfunctions to the list of problems at her new Las Vegas stage show. Britney began spilling out of her clothes, but then again, they'd probably sell more tickets if people knew the show was in 3D. Becoming a new father, hip-hop artist Ludacris filed paternity papers to limit his child support payments. See, back in the day, guys like MC Hammer always managed to keep it in their pants. Then again, with the size of MC Hammer's pants, it's more likely Hammer was just never able to find it. And that's the Hollywood Rockin' Wrap-Up. Follow us on Twitter at Rockin' Wrap-Up.
Get ready, crank up the volume, feed your cat. Introducing a man with a bigger Pez collection than you. Ladies and gents, your host, Ryan Crow.
Well, if only that were true. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to American Psycho. We're waiting for Mr. Crow to join us. Of course, dealing with Friday LA traffic is always a fun time, and it's turning out to be somewhat of a habit. But you know what? Until he gets here and until our special guest joins us, we're going to go ahead and play you some music, because I ain't got nothing to talk about. So let's go ahead and cue up something here from the archives just for your listening pleasure. Because you don't want to hear me. I got nothing. Here's some Crazy World from Big Money.
one out there coming back in. Eat your cheesecake, lick the plate clean, watch some TV, hell a Shark Week. Turn the lights on, it's a nice room. I'm a white bear, dodge an eagle. Ooh, the clear stuff, throw your hands up. Shadow ninjas, gonna get ya. In a crazy world. Now that we have lost control, is there nothing left to show? Now we're all alone in the crazy world, falling deeper in a hole, and the evil stole my soul. I am all alone in the crazy world. Caught a spaceship at the Walmart, then I hit it in my golf cart. Shoot my gun up, rob a shortstop, throw my right cross, love my hot sauce. Going downtown, touch some round, show her how bound, take a wow. Happy birthday, here's some yeah. Smoke this green skunk, time to get drunk. In the crazy world. Now that we have lost control, is there nothing left to show? Now we're all alone in the crazy world, falling deeper in the hole, and the evil stole my soul. I am all alone in the crazy world. Now we lost control, and there's nothing left to show. Now we lost control, now we're all alone. Now that we have lost control, is there nothing left to show? Now we're all alone in the crazy world, falling deeper in a hole, and the evil stole my soul. I am all alone in the crazy world. In the
Well, look who decided to join us. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to switch the realms over here in just a second, and we have a little guest in the studio. It's actually the host, where the guest has become the host. So let's go ahead and do a transition, shall we?
I thought agenda was an STD until my baby came and educated me. And I know what the band was doing wrong. Gotta put lip belt message in our song, something like this. Yeah, something like this. Something about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Something about a little bit of innocence you stole. Uncle Vince, we can't do it tree. Me, I went searching around 12 Real Street now. All about self-dead woman should be strong. Your beauty celebrate here in the confines of the song. Sounds something like, yeah, something like so hot, right too. Until you hold you back, try to see what you can do. So move the task, bright like lightning on your foot for now. I went fast, go every Friday, way, make it work somehow. You give him, you take him, my Sylvia's, I bring him, it's my raise him. Show to be, but now all I see by those badass authorities, nothing down here for anybody else but me. I'm gonna do it one more time, but she left me alive.
Hello?
Hello.
Robert, are you there?
I'm here.
That's great. Well, at least one of us is. Thank you so much for calling in. How are you doing, my friend?
Great. How you doing?
You know, everything is rolling along quite nicely, and welcome to this episode of American Psycho. Thank you so much for calling in. So, you know, you have a very interesting profession and a very interesting history. How did you get it? How did you get into that?
That's the first question people ask me.
I'm sure.
And
sorry to be redundant.
You know, I was studying criminal justice, trying to decide what I wanted to do. And I had this professor, a lawyer type guy. I wanted to be self-employed, and I thought, I wonder if anybody could make any money being a private investigator. Back at that point, I think I was watching Banachek on TV or something. You know, it was a really, really freaking antique shows. You know, late at night.
So what year was that?
And he said, oh, yeah, you probably could. You know, you get licensed and yada yada. Well, I got licensed back in 1975 in Colorado. And I come to find out that, no, you couldn't make a living at that. I pretty much starved for about 5 years. And then I was living with someone at the time, and she said, why don't you get a profession where there's actually a demand or some need for, you know, which kind of chapped my hide, you know. But what happened was one day I was just beating the bushes, and I got a corporate client through somebody I knew. And it kind of took off from there. I started getting some publicity. I did some high-profile cases, et cetera, et cetera. The rest is kind of history, as they say. So I've pretty much done it all over the years.
Well, so, you know what? Lots of people say things like, I've done it all, but I'm actually going to ask you to tell me about the done it all that you've done. I mean, my understanding is some stuff with the OJ case?
Yeah, we worked on the OJ case. I worked the John Benet Ramsey case. I've worked, we've had some fairly high-profile things. We busted the governor of Colorado back in the mid-'90s and yada, yada. And
well, let's start with the
OJ?
Yeah, let's go ahead. I mean, so what did you find out?
Well, back in that era, I was doing a lot of work in L.A. even though I was based in Denver, and we had a client named Marvin Davis, the multi-billionaire. He's passed away since, but he was his wife was associated with a group, and they wanted to help Nicole Brown, the victim, and her family. Nicole Brown Simpson and her family, because they knew they were sure that Juice was guilty. At that point, people still thought it was the Columbia Drug Cartel or something,
All right, so
in L.A. at that point.
Before we go down to exactly what, so if you were to say right now, guilty or innocent?
Who, OJ? Oh, everybody knows he's guilty, don't they? I hope.
Well, I think so. I think so too. But I just.
I mean, if you followed it,
I
but
thought
it was
check
interesting.
in,
Early on, a lot of people didn't think he was in L.A. But I think I'm pretty sure that whole thing has reversed itself. But
I agree. I think you're right.
Yeah. But what else can I tell you? I've done it all. We do a lot of asset search work, a lot of financial. We do background for litigation. A lot of criminal fraud investigation, but we also have done criminal defense over the years, So it kind of runs the gamut. It really does. It depends on any given year. I have different clientele and different types of cases I'm working on,
So when you were working on the OJ case, I mean, how did that come to you?
It came to me, like I said, through this person. We'd been working for this Marvin Davis. I don't know if you're in L.A. He was a multi-billionaire. Fox or Davis Entertainment, they funded a lot of movies. He got into showbiz. It used to be in a while. Anyway, his wife was associated with some people who were, picture Gloria Allred. They were into women's issues.
I'd rather not picture Gloria Allred, thank you, but that hurts.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I was on her show one time. It did hurt, but yeah. But they were convinced that OJ might slide, so we worked on the prosecution end of it. We found someone who saw OJ staking out California Pizza Company, which was across from Mezzaluna, where Ron Goldman. I don't know how many people remember all this trivia.
Yeah, no, actually,
Ron Goldman worked the night that they were both killed.
Yeah, no, I got to tell you. A guy. I used to be in a band with a singer that was working at Mezzaluna at the time that all this went down. So I know Mezzaluna really well.
Yeah. So it was interesting. We found a witness that had seen OJ staking out the California Pizza Company, which is kind of a catty corner across the street from Mezzaluna, when Ron Goldman was there with some of his buddies about 2 weeks before they were killed. And he was sitting there in his white Bronco in 90-degree heat with someone who they thought at that time was Julia Roberts. Turned out it was Paul Barbieri, the girlfriend back then, for people who remember all this.
So you could confuse
the DA's
Julia Roberts with Paul Barbieri.
They didn't use about 80% of what they had, so.
Wow.
Yeah, it was frustrating. It was one of those cases. I think they kind of threw it, if you get, for lack of a better term. I mean, I think they were worried about riots. I don't know if OJ got convicted. I'm not sure, but the DA's office, Marcia Clark, and those people were pretty lame. We brought them things and they just refused to bother with it.
So for you, as somebody who is gathering information. And you bring it to somebody that is supposedly going to be prosecuting a case, and yet they do, as you say, nothing with it. How does that make? I mean, does that drive you up the walls and make you nuts?
It's frustrating, but I guess
Yeah.
people in law enforcement deal with that a lot too. I mean, the cops, they'll bring something to the DA, and a DA,
Sure.
they have a lot of prosecutorial discretion. They can decide to use it, not use it, prosecute, not prosecute. A lot of it's political, especially in a town like L.A.,
Oh, you mean
I
there's
did a press
politics
conference
here?
there, and I said L.A. is becoming the laughing stock of the world because they can't convict O.J. Simpson when he butchers two people. But yeah, so it can be frustrating. Yeah, but you have to roll with it and kind of go on.
Sure. So how do you? Okay. So the case goes the way that it does, and clearly not the way that you felt that it should have gone. And I'm with you. How do you deal with that? How do you absorb that? How do you go, okay, so I've got all this information and I've gathered all this info and this guy walks.
Yeah, I know. It's
So
tough. It's tough.
Yeah, so how do you manage that? How do you as a person handle that kind of
it's
kick in the
not
nuts?
easy, but I guess you have to develop some kind of fairly thick hide, I guess. But
Sure.
I'll tell you a tougher one. We worked the John Benet Ramsey case. Now that was tough.
I was
Here's a
going to
little
ask you about
picture.
that. Yeah, so let's talk about
Yeah.
that. I mean, so
We haven't
no,
given up on it yet, but I don't know if that'll ever actually be prosecuted.
So how did that case come to you?
That case, I was based in Denver at the time, and actually I was out in San Diego when it happened. But I was retained by a psychiatrist, a doctor, about 3 months after the John Benet Ramsey case happened, because he had an intruder in his house who accosted his daughter, who was 12. I believe she was 12, going on 13, but very petite. He was out of town. She's home alone with the mother, and it was similar to me. In other words, there was an intruder in the house who had been in there for hours, and that's what happened in the John Benet. That's what happened in the John Benet Ramsey case, and that's how I got into the John Benet Ramsey case. It was kind of a segue from that, So I worked on that. I've got boxes and boxes. Worked on that for a couple of years at least.
So that actually sounds like it's somewhat related.
Yeah, well, that was the idea. I mean, this girl had gone to the same dance studio that John Benet had gone to, and there were some characters that hung around that establishment, and we looked in. I think I know. I'd go out on a limb and say I can't prove it, but I think I know, but I can't say because we're still kind of working on it.
So, but you have an idea of who may have been actually involved in it.
Yeah, it's possible. Here again, I was off. When I got into that case, I was off of the wrong track. I was after the wrong person for about a year and a half. So you talk about frustration. And we determined that they couldn't have been involved. So I went on another track. I think I have the right track, but I can't prove it at this point.
Right.
So you talk about frustration. That's frustrating. I mean, when you have a little 6-year-old girl who's murdered in her basement, and the parents didn't do it, and the Boulder PD and the prosecutor, they're all over the parents and destroying their lives. I mean, that's a frustrating case. And there was an older police detective named Lou Schmidt. He was out of Colorado Springs, and the DA's office brought him in. The DA's office was pretty good. The Boulder police was terrible. But he and I agreed that early on that the parents didn't do it. But it was frustrating watching them. It was kind of like OJ. It was after OJ, and I think there was a lot of that sentiment. They thought, oh, these Rich Ramsey parents are lawyering up, and they must have done it. People were so frustrated that OJ got away with it that there was kind of a backlash, I think, of public sentiment. More wealthy people lawyering up with a dream team, and all that stuff. So there again, it was kind of political, and but they in this case they went after the wrong people. So yeah, that's frustrating. OJ you can deal with. That was frustrating to a point, but
So when you're in a situation and you know that who you know to be people that are being wrongly accused, is there a way for you to speak out about that, or does that violate some sort of?
I did. Oh no, I
Okay.
did. I was lambasted. I on several talk radio, TV. I think I was on Dateline in that case. I was on Court TV. I was on Geraldo. Geraldo blasted me. Geraldo was sure the parents did it, you know. This is when Geraldo had a decent interview show for, you know, a few years back. Not his early show, you know, but, you know, and I was on Court TV, and I said, well, it sure looks like everybody was just convinced of the parents. Well, later on, they were pretty much vindicated because the partial DNA with the mitochondrial DNA advances excluded them because they found, you know, unidentified white male DNA on John Bonet, so then they were excluded, you know. But so that's frustrating when you watch two innocent people. I mean, if you have a kid of your own and you look at that and you go, "Wow, what if that was me?"
Yeah,
and
no,
I was being accused.
I
had radio talk show host in Denver. Peter Boyle's a big radio star there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Peterson is crazy, you know. Parents did it, yada yada. You know, it's kind of that mob mentality. People got fixated on thinking it was the parents wanting it to be the parents because they thought they were rich, which they weren't, of course. But you know, that was a frustrating one. You want to talk about frustrating? Now you're getting my blood pressure up just thinking about that case.
Well, I'm sorry, and yet on the other hand, I'm not, because that's. But I appreciate your honesty and your willingness to talk about it. I'm sure it's got to be. It's got to not be.
But, you know,
an
on
easy
the other
thing to
side,
discuss.
we work. You know, I'm real familiar with the legal system and some of the nuances of criminal justice and the civil litigation end of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we've done a lot of some criminal defense work too. So you know, it's kind of, I guess, it's kind of mercenary in that regard. But
so I mean,
I think we've gotten it.
So, and I'll go back to something that I went to earlier. Is what brought you to this work? Because I mean, number one, you sound very, very passionate about it, and I would expect that you would have to be to go through and deal with, even though you're exploring what has got to be some really dark and ugly parts of humanity. What brought you to that?
It's not always like that. I mean, we do things like genealogical research and
Sure.
locating extended family for people who can't find their relatives. You know, locating people who be found and reuniting people. So there's, you know, it's not all dark and deep and dark, but yeah, it can be.
So let's talk about that for a second. So tell me, I mean, since we've talked about a couple of really dark and nasty yet famous stories, tell me something about where you actually was there something where you found somebody and reunited somebody to somebody else?
Oh, yeah, we've done a lot of that over the years. If you want a high-profile one, remember Roseanne Barr? We found a daughter she put up for adoption. Everybody was trying to find the kid, including Roseanne, and we located her and gave the information to Roseanne. Yeah, that stuff's pretty gratifying.
I would expect. I mean, so tell me, and it doesn't even have to be high-profile.
Yeah, we've done done a number of those. I mean, I used to get, I haven't in the last couple of years, but I used to get Christmas cards from people who, you know, found an extended family and they had a happy, joyous reunion, somebody they'd been looking for 30 years, and that's pretty gratifying work. So
I would think so. I mean, that's got to be so to really sort of counterbalance the stuff that you're doing that may not be quite as positive. But to then have something like that go on and then get notes years later that the work that you've done is actually carried on in that kind of way. That's actually, I would expect that's it. You got to have at least a grin.
Yeah, I did one of those recently for a guy he's now 56 years old. He's put up for adoption at birth. And he didn't know who his natural parents were. Luckily he was adopted by great adoptive parents, but they had passed away recently. So he decided he'd try to find his parents. Well, it turned out his mother was deceased and his father was also deceased, but I found his half-brother, and it turned out that the half-brother had never had any siblings either. So he's getting all, when I finally found this guy, he's getting all teared up on the phone and, you know, but this guy was our client was really fortunate because had he remained with his natural mother, his life would have been an unmitigated disaster, you know, as evidenced by the half-brother I found who would tell you that. I mean, she was a prostitute. She you know, was a bartender in Oregon and, you know, rough and tumble mining bars and or logging bars, and he would have had a terrible life.
Mm-hmm.
But it was pretty gratifying because we did find some extended family for him after all this time. So yeah, those are fun to do.
No, I'm sure that's going to be the kind of when you do work like that. I've got to at least I would hope that you finish off a day like that and you've got to be smiling a bit.
Yeah, that was a great one. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we just did a wrongful death case for a woman
Yeah.
who. If you want to hear about a wrongful death case,
Absolutely.
It sounds a little like ambulance chasing, but her husband fell off a golf cart and killed himself. Well, it turns out there was a kid driving the golf cart. He was driving around a parking lot recklessly. This guy was also drinking, so no attorney would take it because it's what's called in legalese comparative negligence. In other words, her husband was also imbibing a lot.
Right.
So it's partially his fault. But here's a woman who is a widow with 4 kids. She's about to lose her house, and her and I get connected through a mutual acquaintance, and I found a law firm to take it because I knew I would work it. So I found a lot of people witnesses who would, vouch for the fact that the resort allowed drinking and they allowed underage people, et cetera, et cetera. So she got a judgment out of it, so she's not destitute anymore. So that was pretty gratifying too. So yeah, it's not all deep and dark, It's just, kind of runs the gamut.
So I'm still trying to figure out what brought you. This is not the kind of work that somebody just wakes up in the morning and goes, "Hey, you know what? I think I'd like to do everything that you're doing," and clearly
You're right.
doing it very well.
It was kind of a process. When I was back in Illinois before I moved to Colorado, this is way back. I was in law enforcement as a rookie back then in a suburb of Chicago. And
which one? Because I'm familiar with Chicago.
This is Downers Grove, Illinois.
Okay, I know.
And they put me in Vice with my baby face, barely 21, and I didn't like it because back then, believe it or not, they were sending people away for small amounts of marijuana.
Oh,
I just did not feel good about that. I knew people that smoked it, and I had smoked it. In fact, I'd tried it. I was never really crazy about it. But anyway, so I left there, went to Colorado, beat around the mountains for a while, and decided to go back to school and study criminal justice. I didn't know if I wanted to get into law enforcement or what I wanted to do, and I got a license in Colorado after I'd worked for a couple of investigative agencies for a little while. Licensing there was pretty easy. California is fairly stringent, but it was pretty simple matter to get licensed back then. You got bonded, and but that's kind of how I fell into it. And like I said, I starved for the first several years, but
sure.
Then I got some word of mouth advertising going, and got some decent clients developed, and so.
I think what I'm what I'm curious about is, what is it about this work that fuels you? Because there's something. Because I mean, in terms of all the stories that you've told me about, there's something about it that fuels you to go after.
It can be really fun.
Sure.
I'm kind of a gadget freak, and it always enabled me to justify spending money on the latest gadgetry, cameras, recording device, whatever it was, electronic equipment, etc. So that part of it's fun, and most of the time it's pretty interesting, whether you're doing surveillance or tracking people down, or even if you're on the other side doing criminal defense work and you get somebody off who you think isn't guilty or definitely not guilty of all the things they've been charged with, it can be gratifying. So, people used to ask me, they say, "Well, what do you do for a hobby?" And I'd say, "Well, I remember what Mario Andretti said. He said, when you love what you do like I do, who needs a hobby,
But is there something about finding justice or bringing justice to a situation that is?
Yeah.
I mean, tell me about, because I get that you've been doing it, but there's got to be something about just finding the criminal that I just sort of sense that in what you're saying.
Some of that, and then I was always enamored, I guess, like a lot of younger people are, with this whole spook spy business, and
sure,
always sound intriguing, and it's It's fun. It's not always exciting, but it's usually interesting. It depends on who your clients are.
Right.
I mean, I've been sent to Greece to locate people and things.
Really?
Of that
You
nature.
got
So
sent?
It can be pretty interesting. It can also be very boring. Don't get me wrong. Sitting on surveillance and things of that nature. But
I'm sure. I have no doubt. There's the ups and downs. So you've actually been sent overseas. You've been sent to.
a couple times. Yeah.
So how does
Not
that
too long
happen?
ago, sent to Alaska. Now that's not a lot of fun. Trust me.
That's bloody cold.
But, yeah.
So why did you get sent to Alaska?
Dark all winter and light all summer. You know.
Right?
Yeah. And yeah.
And that's just the sandwiches.
Actually, I was sent there by someone who's pretty famous, and I can't use their name.
Sure, no worries.
It was a custody and a marital thing, and they were trying to get the goods on her so that they could obtain custody. She led kind of it was kind of a checkered lifestyle. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was hanging out in bars in Alaska, and of course I stuck out like a sore thumb when I showed up in Alaska because everybody there had a deathly pallor. This was in January, and here I am from San Diego, and I had a little color to my skin. You know, like, oh, where are you from, buddy? You know?
Yeah, you've actually got some color in your skin. You're not from here, and we know it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's no way to disguise it, unless I went and chalked myself up or something. You know, but it was interesting, but wouldn't want to live there. Let's put it that way, but. Anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean.
Yeah, and I've traveled around the country quite a bit. We've gone to, D.C., doing political work, a little that what they call nowadays opposition research, those kinds of things.
So if you're if you're going after a politician, that's got to be interesting.
That's fun. And let me tell you, and assuming especially that he's not of your political ilk, you know. But
that makes it better, right?
And it also can pay really well because look at the money they put into campaigns. I mean, if you can find the information that this person and his campaign are doing underhanded things to the opposition, or something, just not necessarily even illegal, but unethical, violating campaign regulations, et cetera, it's worth a lot to your client, and they're going to spend what? I don't know, in a national election, many millions on advertising. So if you can develop something that can be given free to the media,
right,
that helps the campaign, it's worth a lot of money. Let's put it that way. So that's
without naming names or naming parties or anything to keep it the attack bipartisan.
Sure.
So what was something that you had with a politician? What was a reason you had to go after looking into something about one of them?
Well, this was a governor. I kind of alluded to her earlier, and he was going to run. He was in the process. He was termed out. He was going to run for U.S. Senate, and the opposition determined that they thought there was something going on with his chief of staff. And sure enough, he'd been having a 16-year affair. This is a guy with a wife and 5 kids. And he'd been having a 16-year affair with his chief of staff and denied it a couple of times over that period. A couple of different points he'd been questioned about it, you know, but nobody could prove it. Well, we proved it. We caught him in Washington, D.C. at the airport, them smooching in a car, got it all on videotape. But it was more than that. It was more about, it wasn't just one of those tawdry affair exposés. He was spending a lot of state money on her and junkets and some promotional things. And so it was kind of interesting. It got us into Chicago and D.C. and inside the Beltway and Georgetown and all those places.
Okay, so I got to know this. All right, so you're working on an investigation, and you're trying to figure something out about somebody, a politician or anybody, and then you find out what it is you were hoping to find out. What happens in your office or your place? Is there dancing, cheering?
Well, sometimes, yeah. It's not necessarily in the office. And in that case, we were in an airport parking lot, so we didn't do a lot of celebrating until later. But
sure,
yeah, yeah. In fact, this guy, we had tracked him to the political convention in Chicago, and from there we determined through our wily means and sources and resources that he was on a flight into D.C. with his chief of staff, this woman, and but we couldn't get a flight. So we had to rent a car. We had to cancel our room reservation. We were staying downtown Chicago. Had to cancel our flight, jump in a rent a car, drive to D.C. from Chicago overnight to get there because we knew luckily he wasn't flying out until the next morning, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to get there ahead of him by driving because we couldn't get a flight on late notice because everything was booked. And so it can be a little hectic to say the least. In fact, we got stopped by I think it was Pennsylvania State Patrol. The guy who was working with me was doing about 95 and 65 or something. You know?
I was going to say, I mean, do you have the Mission Impossible theme just running through your head constantly?
No, I don't. Tell you the truth, hardly ever. But trust me, it can get that way. I mean,
sure.
I've had so many people that wanted to intern, especially when I was getting a lot of publicity. Everybody said, I'd make a great investigator. I've always thought I'd be great at that. I'd love to do it. So maybe you'd intern somebody to see if they had capabilities, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And what would happen invariably was, you were going to send them out on a little minor undercover shtick with some innocuous stockbroker type,
mm-hmm.
and they would spend a sleepless night, running this thing over in their head, getting more paranoid by the minute, awake all night, and decided it wasn't for them because they were, they would conjure up these images of, I must be investigating the mafia and they're going to kill me.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people just aren't cut out for it. I mean, they if they're doing anything that's undercover or surveillance or, they're just not suited for it. And they think they are until they actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
But, it depends on what you put them on, too. I mean, a lot of it's fairly technical, doing, some of the financial and asset research, so.
So I'm still curious because we've tiptoed around this, but I'm going to ask you again. Why this work, Robert? Why are you doing
I don't
this?
know. I don't know.
Yes, you do.
I always wanted to be self-employed. I knew that.
Okay, that's.
Mm-hmm. I thought about going back into law enforcement at one point before I got into the investigative work. And I thought, well, if I can be self-employed, be my own boss, and maybe I'll have a lot of glamorous cases, like the guy on TV. And, of course, I didn't for too many years, But I don't know. It's just interesting. I was never meant to be a desk jockey, a pencil pusher.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember my father, who was a CPA, sitting me down and trying to get me. He thought maybe I would want to go be a junior CPA, and I just wasn't wired that way. So
I'm like, this is not CPA work, not even close.
Yeah. But then at one point I got too busy and I had several, I was up to 5 or 6 employees. I ended up being a desk jockey again. I ended up being an administrator because although I had a secretary and I'm kind of an office manager, I still had to be coordinating things and tracking things and, so I'm kind of downsized now. I have like 2 subcontractors that work with me.
Sure.
And it's much more, I like it better, I think. So, but it's varied. It's not punching a clock. It's not,
Sure,
working on a punch press, and it's not being a banker and sitting in a bank all day, reading novels, wishing they could do something investigative or something along those lines. It's not always thrilling and exciting. A lot of times it's really boring and mundane and stupid, but it's
stupid,
interesting in yourself.
I don't think there's anything about your work that I would describe as stupid, actually.
Well, sometimes it feels like it. I mean, if you're just watching someone or something,
Sure.
It just depends on what it is.
But is there anything about it? I mean, for you, I mean, you're, and maybe I'm projecting on it. I don't know, and feel free to call me on it if I am. But is there something about going after the bad guy? Is there something about that for you?
Yeah, that can be gratifying, but I don't know that I'm all that,
I'm not saying you're
Batman. I'm Mr. Truth
but...
and Justice. It's more about the challenge, Sometimes it's about, just playing by your wits, developing information, developing sources, being able to track things. And like I said, sometimes it's about being able to use all the newest, latest technology and things that are available and
So the
developing new things as you go.
So the process is actually sort of a joy for you. It's not even
Yeah,
necessarily
sure.
the end result, but just the process of doing it.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, I think. It's like life is, it's not necessarily about the destination. It's more about the journey, sometimes. A little cliche, but it's kind of true.
You know what? Cliches are there for a reason.
That's right. Somebody
Yeah.
told me that once. I was so heavy into cliches for a while. And they said, "Well, the cliches are there for a reason." I said, "Well, that's a good cliche."
Exactly. They don't happen
But it's
by
true.
accident.
Yeah, you're right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything there. I don't think there's any reason to be embarrassed or bothered by the fact that, hey, there's a thing about what I like that is a cliche. Hey, you know what? A cliche happened for a reason, and if you don't like it, so
Yeah.
it's amazing. So all right. So you've got so. I know that we talked a bit about the JonBenet Ramsey case, and recently there was the report that had come out that said that there was DNA evidence that said that there's no way it was the family, and you were saying there's no way it was the family. Where do you think something like that goes? How does that ever get resolved, or does it ever get resolved?
What little bit of contaminated DNA there is with the advances in science. In other words, it took a number of years before they got around to the enhanced mitochondrial DNA, et cetera, where they could work with the really minute samples. And so they were able to determine, this was a male, Caucasian male, Anglo. One of these days, I think the DNA technology will get so good that if that's preserved, they'll be able to do a lot more identification.
It'll get so good they'll have your phone number.
Just about, yeah. Maybe, maybe if you study the science, it could almost happen. It probably could happen at some point.
How funny
Maybe
would
not in
that?
our lifetime, but
How funny would that be? We took a
Yeah.
swab, and by the way, your phone number came up. Wait, what?
hey, what with the databases and the internet and all the conjoined sources and resources out there nowadays, almost anything's possible. So, yeah, but, something like that, then again, sometimes a case like that drags on for years,
Sure.
and somebody gets mad at somebody you talk to who wouldn't tell you anything at that point, that you're pretty sure knew something, maybe emails you one day. Every once in a while I'll get emails on that case, or somebody will call me, and maybe something breaks or something you can follow up on. It's not unheard of. Cold cases sometimes get hot after 20, 30 years. It's hard to say.
Hey, they made a TV show out of it, right?
Yeah, right. Yep.
So you're figuring that at least with this particular case, that there's something still out there floating that nobody's broken about yet, and at some point, something, whatever it is.
Yeah, there are some things there that I know that it's just a matter of proving. It's a matter of having enough tangible that you could go to a prosecutor and say, listen, you can actually do something with this,
So have you ever gone out and like spoken about that publicly and just said, hey, these people they're innocent and you're all full of it, and there's somebody out there who knows something, and hey, speak up?
Oh yeah, like I said in the JonBenet Ramsey case, I was on a number. I was on some national TV, etc., telling the world that, hey, guess what? The Ramseys didn't do it. And back then, I took a lot of heat. I did. Like I said, people like Geraldo. I can't remember the person on court TV, and
Geraldo.
But there were some fairly credible people that were just sure it was the Ramseys had to have done it. So yeah, you can take some heat, but I don't know.
But if you know what you know and you're solid in your beliefs about something, then the heat has got to be sort of almost boring, and like, yeah, okay, you can be as argumentative as you want, but I know what I know, so take a
Well,
hike.
and a few years later, in that case, for example, then the DNA came out that it excluded the parents. So then I was pretty much vindicated, but didn't help matters any. But really didn't solve the case. So
Sure. So I mean, How does that?
That's the one thing I'd like to do. The one thing I'd like to do before I croak is solve that case.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. That's interesting to me. In that, okay, so there's this situation, there's this case that you don't have solved yet, but you'd really like to, and so that drives you to some extent.
Pardon? What?
That drives you, just sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's something I've had to put to the side because I probably expended way too much time and effort on it.
Sure.
You know, for a period of years, and every once in a while it'll really bug me, or I'll see something about it on TV.
Mm-hmm.
But I still have some feelers out there. I still have some people I keep in touch with. There's some sources. There's some things I follow up on occasionally. So yeah, I haven't given up on it.
Do you have any suspicions?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm down to one person, possibly someone who could have helped them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I pretty much know the ransom note by heart, for example, and I know the person who used all that phraseology and the movie references in it, et cetera, and
so your suspicions have purpose and reason.
Yeah, I think so. I'd like to think so.
Sounds like. So
Yeah.
So what do you do with that? How do you carry that forward? Because that's got to be to an extent, I would think. I mean, if I was in your situation, that would weigh on me. That would,
yeah, it does. But you know, it's something I had to put aside. I really did. I mean, I was probably driving my wife crazy too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just something I had to put it aside for a while because I need to make a living and do things that I can actually you know, work on things that with an attainable goal. I mean, that may just be out there, and I may, you know, it may never be solved.
So that's
you know, you
but
can't spend all your time working on something that
no,
doesn't have any light at the end of the tunnel.
No, I totally understand that, but that's got to weigh on you a little bit too. I mean, there's sort of like there's this thing that and again, I'm putting myself in your position, where if there's something that there's a crime that's happened, and I believe I may have an idea of who did it, but I can't prove it yet.
Yeah, it's
How do you
tough.
put
I mean,
that
you'll
aside?
watch some of these old cold case things on TV, and you'll see some old homicide detective, and he's retired, and he worked on this thing for 20 years or something, and you can tell it still really bugs him,
Right.
you know. And they're really, you know, and of course he's elated if it gets solved, you know, even if he's out of the picture at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's always there, yeah.
So how do you deal
But
with that?
then you have to figure out how much is it just your ego that you just want to solve this so you look good and impress people,
Sure.
as opposed to really looking for justice and truth and light and all that, you know. And
Well,
at
so
some point you go, well, listen, I just can't. Whatever it is, whatever all my motivations are, I can't spend my entire life going
Well,
after
so
that
you
one
tell me,
case.
where does that balance happen? Where's the point that I mean, you're going after a case, you're going after where
I don't know. Part of it is making a living. In other words, if you could solve a high-profile case, it's better than a low-profile case as far as putting your kids through college, etc. You know, so you know it may drive you a little more because it is a high-profile case, and that probably shouldn't be the way you think. But I'm afraid that probably plays into it.
Oh, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. I really don't.
Yeah, probably not. Probably.
You know, there's, I mean, yeah, I mean, going after a case and solving something, I mean, certainly there is the justice aspect. But I don't think there's anything wrong or even inappropriate about going, you know what, by the way, I did this and I pat myself on the back because I took this bad motherfucker down and I put him behind bars where he belonged because he did something horrible. I don't think there's anything wrong with being happy for doing that.
No, I agree. Hey, this is better than a session with my shrink. So actually, I don't have a shrink, so
Well,
I wouldn't know. But
well, the great thing is I don't charge, so you're
yeah,
good.
that's great. That's great. So don't you guys, break for commercials or?
Well, normally we do, but I ran late, so we skip commercials and we just have to deal with the nitty gritty and the real life. But the show is actually coming to a close in a bit. But so if somebody, let's say somebody out there in the world, needed your services, how does somebody find you?
Well, you can go to our little website, which is rwpeterson.com, or you could call our 800 number, which is 888-550-PETE. Pretty simple, huh? P-E-T-E.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, as much as I would love to say, by all means, reach out to you. There's also part of me that goes, I hope you're never in a situation that you have to. That's got to be an interesting thing where, like, when somebody contacts you, it's because something bad has happened.
Well, not always, but like I tell people, if you're ever in a situation where you think you probably need an attorney, you probably need us first, because we're probably going to save you a certain amount of money and aggravation, and maybe settle, if it's a litigation, settle it out because we get the information. Attorneys are just kind of middlemen, That's my little spiel.
Trust me, when the show's over, I'm going to call you. I've got a bunch of people I want you to look into.
Okay.
just for the fun of it.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But I really want to thank you for taking the time to be as open and honest as you have been. And my apologies for I've run late 2 weeks in a row now. I've run late on this show. I need to get a note from my mom.
No problem. I enjoyed it. Hey, you got me thinking again. Maybe I'll get back into that, Ramsey. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, you know what? If I've got you thinking, that's amazing. Because something tells me your brain is. Your brain's probably working more than you think it is, and that would, even in and of itself, is kind of ironically scary.
Well, that's nice of you to say, but anyway, yeah, it's been great, and I enjoyed it.
No, me too, and really, thank you so much for taking the time and being available, and I guess other than thank you, there's not a lot more that I can say. This has been really, really enjoyable.
Hey, no problem. We'll keep in touch, and like you said, maybe you'll need to locate someone or something. You lose them, we find them. That's our motto.
That's a bumper sticker right there.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, or on a T-shirt, if you don't have that yet, Robert, go make it. I'm a fan.
I should. Yeah.
Alrighty, well, thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you, and have a good night.
You as well, and everybody out there, thank you for tuning into how much more of an American Psycho show could you have it than the conversation we've had.
There you go.
Thank you so much, Robert. I really
okay,
appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Right,
have a great New Year.
You too.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And there you have it. Another episode of American Psycho. We got so much more coming up for you. So much more coming up this year. Not only, we're actually going to have a change of show name, but we'll get more into that later. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and we will see you and hear you when we do. Kisses.
Until we meet again, stay tuned for Liquor and Poker, coming up next on XSite Radio, your source for the best in original shows.